Welcome to the Complete Streets July 10th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Sally Cole. Commissioners present include Brian Ottman, Meredith Bergen-Bailey, Athena Irakomos, and Matthew Raskoff. Commissioners absent include Jackie Sebrian and Lisbeth King. City staff present include Matthew Hui and Kevin Chen. Matthew, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, thank you, Chair Cole. Thank you, Chair Cole and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the July 10th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, virtual attendees on Zoom may engage the raised hand feature. Or, if you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. We'll now move on to reports and announcements, in which city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin, do you have any reports and announcements?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Relatively light update for today. Basically, the City Council adopted the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. So as you know, some of the additional items that we have requested for this upcoming year, two that came up during some conversations. One is the KV circuit, the high voltage circuit conversion for streetlights. And then the other one is requesting some additional funding for the Middle Avenue resurfacing, which will be part of the overall traffic calming, bike lane resurfacing effort for the entire project. So glad to see that the budget got adopted, which means we now have the funding to move those projects forward. So with that, I will conclude my announcement. Thank you.
That's great news. Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject that is not listed on tonight's agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or your city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items that are not listed on the agenda. And therefore, the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues that are brought up under this public comment period, other than to provide general information. Matthew, would you please call for any general public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide general public comments, you may engage the raise hand feature. Or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I see one raised hand virtually for Eileen Latman. Eileen, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Good evening, Complete Streets Commission and City Council members. I'd like to send my appreciation for the additional striping that was completed along Scott Boulevard and Campbell Avenue this past week, along with the street cleaning. We did see some positive movements of the RVs moving, but unfortunately they have returned back, but with even bigger and more issues blocking the street along Campbell Avenue and Scott Boulevard. I did see notices, and I apologize if this is going to be on the agenda tonight, of additional signage or striping that will occur, but we'd like to continue to push the City Complete Commission to add additional signage of no vehicle over 6 feet or no RV parking. As you know, the Supreme Court has passed a law indicating city violations for unhoused units, especially the RVs here they know that this is a local place that they can come to park and to live, and it's causing a disruptance for the employees and tenants at Campbell Avenue and Scott Boulevard. So thank you again. We appreciate the efforts that you're doing, but we want to continue to push on this and hope to see some resolution up in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, I have a clarifying question, but should I save it for the agenda item that is on this issue? If Ms. Latman is still on the call?
Do you think it's related to the item or more just in
It's more to
general?
what she said.
Okay, I think that's fine. in
Okay,
this
Ms.
case,
Latman,
yeah.
if you're still on the call, my clarifying question is, you said we still need more signage. What kind of signage did you mean?
We'd like to see signage that says no parking over 6 feet vehicle. What happened is these RVs are calling a destruction of view when turning along Campbell Avenue onto Scott Boulevard. So once we put signage in, these RVs won't be parking along these areas. There's only red line curbing, but we're still witnessing illegal parking, which we are calling Menlo Park PD to come and ticket these vehicles or tow them
Thank you.
if they're curb. But thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Moving on to regular business. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or its administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is E1, accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for June 12, 2024. Is there any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? I just wanted to say that I asked Kevin to project the minutes. Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Because I looked at them at home and I thought I had one comment, but unfortunately I did not print them out. Here we go. So just to refresh the commissioners' memories, this is the minutes of last week's meeting. Let me just see what it was. We can go down for a moment. It was nothing. Yep. Okay, let's go down a little more. Huh. Can we go back up at first page? I think I might be okay with this. I think it was something I wanted to mention. Yeah. And back up again. Sorry. Oh, I think I know what it was. Wait. There's clarifications, motions. No. Okay, I'm fine. So, Matthew, can we call for public comments on the, thank you for doing that for me, Kevin. Matthew, can you call for public comments on the Complete Streets Commission minutes for the meeting of June 12th, 2024?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. With no clarifying questions from the commission, do I have a motion and second to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, second. Anyone?
I will second.
Excellent. Did you get that, Kevin? Commissioner Rafskoff and Commissioner?
Yes,
Bailey?
and yes, Commissioner Brady. Okay, great. So with a motion and a second on the table for commissioners that would like to vote yes, if you can please raise your hand. I'm seeing all hands raised. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on to E2 on our agenda tonight, which is adopt resolutions to install no parking zones at 120, 140, and 160 Scott Drive. We have here Kevin Chen, our Senior Transportation Engineer, and he will introduce the item and make a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you can give me 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen with you all. There we go. Okay, great. So I believe that in front of you right now is the front page of the presentation. So good evening, everyone. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park. The item before you tonight is a request for additional no parking zones at 3 specific driveways, 120, 140, 160 Scott. They're all located on a single large parcel, but they are independent buildings. Therefore, they're being treated as independent projects in this case. I'm just going to briefly go over the background. Some of you might have heard this before, but for some, I believe we have new commissioners on board. So I wanted to also take some time to kind of go over some of the requests that we received, similar type of requests we received, the evaluation process, and finally the recommendation that typically comes out of this type of projects. So just for point of reference, the image to your right, you'll see that the 3 locations that we're talking about are all located within the Bohannon Business Park, which is kind of located up in the other side of 101, bounded by 101, Marsh, and the railroad tracks typically. Okay. So here is an image of the 120 Scott Drive. So this is the location that is located actually on Campbell Avenue, the first driveway as you get off of Scott Drive. Here is just a kind of a quick image of the location and then what it looks like from the opposite side of the street. Similarly, some existing conditions for your reference. This is the 140 Scott Drive, which is where the driveway is actually located on Scott Drive. And then here is 160 Scott Drive, which is now located actually on Bohannon Drive in this case. So as I mentioned before, this is the type of request that we get periodically, certainly with either commercial properties or residential properties, where a resident or business owner or a property owner will come to the city and request an evaluation of the driveway for site visibility purposes. Typically what that means is that there will be cars that park up against the driveway, and then as a result of that, creating what we call an inadequate line of sight. And generally what that means in layman's term is that if, as a driver, typically as you're pulling out of your garage, you first will look left, turn right for pedestrians if you're crossing a crosswalk or a sidewalk, and then you will proceed to exit your driveway, or maybe some cases a stop sign if it's an intersection, where your line of sight to the left, line of sight to the right is severely blocked by those cars that are parked up against the driveway or up against the intersection. And typically with our city, we do have a lot of those type of situations, certainly. So that's why sometimes we do get those type of requests. They want staff to go out there, evaluate, see if there's any line of sight issues, and as a result of that, make recommendations to address that. So this is, again, one of those typical requests. Here is an image that demonstrates sort of the industry standard of what your sight distance should be based on your speed. So in this case, all Campbell, Scott, and Bohannon are all 25 miles per hour. So using that as the guideline, typically what that means is that you would like to have a minimum line of sight of about 155 feet or more. And here, the image to your right here sort of demonstrates what that means at an intersection, but of course you can use that to interpret for a driveway as well. So if you are someone that's kind of locating on the southern leg, so to speak, you can pretend that to be a driveway. Your line of sight to the left and your line of sight to the right needs to be at least about 150 feet or more, which means there are certain areas where it needs to be clear, which is where that red arrow is demonstrating. That generally means there's a certain amount of distance measured from the intersection of the driveway needs to be clear of any obstructions in order for the driver that's exiting the driveway or a stop sign to be able to see to the left and to the right. So of course, you can see if a roadway speed increases, the distance also increases as well. So the next few slides are going to be images of the actual situation that's out there currently, although I guess after the street cleaning, maybe not as severe. This is a image to the left and to the right, taken from 120 Scott Drives. So as you can see from the image, this is typically an image of a driver that's currently parked at the driveway. So as you can see from this image, the driver is actually almost at the curb line. So if you think about that, that means your car is about 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet or so, depending on the type of car that you're driving, into the roadway already. Now, luckily, there are parked cars next to you, so that means there's not a car that's coming that's going to hit you. However, as you can see, there's not enough line of sight, which means in order for you to see to the left and to the right a bit better before you make the turn, that means you now need to start encroaching into the roadway, which eventually will mean that you start encroaching into oncoming traffic as well. So in this case, this is a line of sight existing condition for 140 Scott Drive. In this case, there is slightly better visibility to the left. However, as you can see a little bit later on, this image is a little bit deceptive because there wasn't a car parked as close to the driveway at the moment that this picture was taken. So that's why it shows a little bit better, but later on there will be an image that should demonstrate kind of why we are making our recommendation for you tonight. To the right, there's already existing red curb out there. So there's about approximately 60 feet of existing red curb.
Is that where the cone stops? Is that what that is?
I'm sorry?
Is that cone significant on the right photo or no?
No, it just,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's just a cone
I thought it
there.
was marking
Yeah,
with
I'm not
you.
sure
Okay.
exactly why
Okay.
it's there. Yeah.
Okay.
And then here is 160 Scott Drive. So this is on Bohannon now. It's kind of the far right of the overall aerial, if you remember. So similar story. To your left, you have approximately 10 feet of red curb right now. Again, the time of the image when this was taken, there was no car there. However, as you'll see later on, that there is certainly a desire for additional red curb if you want to achieve that 155 feet of minimum sightline distance. To the right in this case, there's a shuttle stop right there. So we have approximately 50 feet of red curb right now out there. Just refreshing your memory of a roadway that is designed for or posted with 25 miles per hour. Typically, we're looking for a stopping sight distance of 155 feet.
That last picture was 160, right? 160 Scott Drive? The one before?
Yes, that
the
last
side?
picture
Okay.
was 160 Scott
you.
Drive, which the driveway is actually located on Bohannon Drive,
Okay, thank you.
but it's for the building 160 Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next 3 slides will be sort of the evaluation and our recommendation combined. And then here I'm going to briefly kind of talk about sort of the thought process behind that. Again, due to this is probably the first time for a few of the commissioners here. Typically, when we receive this type of recommendations, staff will go out there, take images, which we have showed that to you already, but also do what we an analysis, what we consider to call it the sight distance triangle. And then triangle is relatively straightforward, explained to the image here. What that generally means is that as a driver that is at the driveway or at a stop sign, we wanted to make sure that there's clear distance that when you look to the right and look to the left, you get about 155 feet of visibility. Hence the triangle notation here. So in this case, what we're demonstrating here is that in order for the driver, and in this case, we're assuming the driver's car is lining up at the curb. So some of the thought process usually behind where you locate the car has quite an impact in terms of the amount of distance or red curb that you need. So for example, if you consider where our stop signs or stop bars are usually located, it's pretty far back from the crosswalk, right? So if you use that as your starting point, you're going to need a lot of red curb in order to get that 155 feet or so. So in order to take that into account, typically from a staff perspective, we want to be a little bit more realistic. We recognize that once the car comes to a stop, they'll probably encroach into the sidewalk. They'll probably encroach furthermore into the street without being put in a compromising situation. So in this case, it's pretty typical for us to assume that the car is essentially lining up at the curb line because you're still at that point pretty safe. There's no oncoming traffic coming at you. So hence, that's why the diagram is illustrated as such. So as you can see, in order for you to see both to the left and to the right and be able to see 155 feet out, we need about 30 feet of red curb on both sides. And generally speaking, when you are doing this type of analysis, because you're assuming that you're a driver, your line of sight is typically assumed to be about 3.5 feet or so, or 4 feet, depending on the type of vehicle, obviously above ground, right? So in this case, I know sometimes we'll kind of imagine, does the height of a vehicle really matters in this case? And generally speaking, if you're a person standing up, yes. But in this case, we're assuming that the driver is actually sitting down, hence why we're assuming 3.5 feet or so above ground. So in that case, for that purpose, a sedan versus an RV versus anything that's bigger, the height doesn't really matter in this case. Now the width does, because the RV certainly is a little bit wider than the car for that purpose. But generally, the height in this case is not what we are too concerned about. So as you can see here, there's 2 red boxes that represent a vehicle, typically the fairly typical length and width of a car, and then where they're situated essentially is sort of the starting point of the parking. And in this case, we're recommending 30 feet on both sides in order to achieve that 155 feet of sight distance. So this is for 120 Scott Drive, which is located on Campbell Avenue. So the next 2 slides are going to be fairly similar stories for 140 and 160. 140 in this case is located on Scott Drive. So as you can see, in this case, we're actually recommending a longer distance than previously, and that is mostly because of the curvature of the road. So as you can see, the road does curve as you head towards Marsh. And typically, the way it curves does either benefit or make it worse when it comes to sight visibility. And in this case, it does make it a little bit worse. And hence why we're recommending a longer red curve in this case. And to the east, as I mentioned before, we already have existing of approximately 60 feet of red curb, which we determined that was adequate to achieve that 155 feet of sight visibility.
Sorry,
So
on that previous slide, there wasn't any existing red zoning on this right side, on the east side, correct?
there is actually. There's on the east side, there's about 60 feet of red curb. It's very faint, which we have since repainted already.
Oh.
But yes, we were able to kind of look at historic street views and determine that there was about 60 feet of red curb.
Oh,
Just
so this
unfortunately,
is-
it was really faded.
This is just repainting that rather than adding an additional?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, 60 feet was more than adequate to achieve that 155 feet of
Existing.
sight
Okay.
visibility. Yep.
Thank you. I just
Mhm.
couldn't see it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The area wasn't that great. So it's kind of a similar outcome here, where we are looking at 160 Scott Drive. In this case, even though it does say 80, because of the way that the design, typically when you have a driveway, there's sort of a radius associated with the driveway. In this case, there isn't, so the cars can really pull up really close to the driveway. And hence, that's why it sort of matches the previous one, even though the previous one is a curvature road as well. So again, recommending 80, I'm sorry, 80 is the total. However, we do have 10 feet of existing red curb already to the left. So we're recommending an additional 70 feet to make it a total of 80. To the south side, or in this case, the east side of your image, as I mentioned before, it's currently a shuttle stop that has red curb already. So we do not need to add any additional red curb. The 50 was more than adequate to achieve the sight distance. So here is just a quick summary of our recommendation in front of you tonight for the 3 driveways. As far as next step is concerned, because this particular item falls under the Complete Street Commission's authority for approval, which means tonight's action from you tonight is what we will move forward with. With that being said, there is a 15-day appeal period. So if tonight's outcome is a yes vote for any or all driveways. Those particular driveways will then be put on a clock, so to speak. Any business owners, residents, anybody that want to share their concern, they can appeal to the city council about your decision tonight. And what that means is that if we receive an appeal, well, then staff will go back, evaluate the reason behind the appeal, and then eventually we'll go to the city council for a final deliberation. If we do not receive any appeal after 15 days, we'll go ahead and create what we call a work order, essentially just basically telling our contractor, hey, this is ready to go. So whenever they're ready, they can go ahead and paint the red curb. So with that, I will conclude my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Does anyone on the commission have any clarifying questions for Kevin before I take public comment?
I have a few questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Raskoff.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. That was very clear. I have three questions. First, to the point addressed by the earlier commenter, is this fundamentally, did the request come based on concern about RV dwellers on this street, or is it primarily about road safety? Did they, in their application, and will the RVs simply move further down the street away from the red painted area, and then probably not address the concern about the unhoused population there? Or will they be fully displaced if parking is removed? Will there no longer be sufficient space? That's my first question. Number two is there a proactive approach by the city to deal with driveways that have line of sight issues that are below standard? Meaning, are we just waiting for the property owners who happen to be aware that the city will address their concerns and have, asymmetric information access? Or is there, a more comprehensive approach? Leading to my third question, which is, how does this relate to the new statewide daylighting laws? Because I understand that, I think this came up in the city council, that there is not yet a plan to remove parking across the city, even despite the daylighting mandate, because it's kind of an unfunded mandate from the state. But should this be treated as part of a larger comprehensive daylighting plan to remove parking per the new requirements of the state at intersections? Those are my three questions.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So going down the order, in this case, and I have touched on it briefly at our last meeting as well. I think the charge of the commission, and in this case, the charge of our staff, so transportation division staff specifically, we're looking at this strictly from a site visibility. So from a safety perspective for the drivers that are coming out of the driveway, not necessarily on the idea of, RV, kind of their situation that is sort of outside the domain of what the Complete Streets Commission and our transportation staff is responsible for. That is actually currently being handled by our city manager's office. So to answer your first question, this is strictly, the request might have been because of the RVs, but it could very well be a regular sedan car that parked there, and they would have a similar concern as well. And as a matter of fact, kind of leading into your second question, there is an effort to look at this a bit more comprehensively, specifically revolving around residential areas. Because obviously with Menlo Park, we have a lot more local residential streets than commercial streets, obviously. And that was actually stemmed from an action that took place by this very commission, I believe back in 2023, where a resident that lives on Robo, this is a resident that lives in an apartment building. They came to the commission with a similar request. The commission heard the item, voted yes to removing parking spaces on both sides of the driveway for visibility purposes. We did receive an appeal from a couple of folks that also live on that street, which we ultimately brought that item to the city council. The city council elected to upheld that appeal. And with that decision, they also directed staff to essentially come back with a more comprehensive review of that policy geared towards residential streets. So that is something that we're currently working on. But we, due to some staff resource constraints, it's currently not, it's being put on hold, but it is something that's on our radar in the near term for sure. And then to answer your third question about how this is related to daylighting, Not necessarily for driveways, because the daylighting policy is specifically for marked and unmarked crosswalks, which means that generally we're talking about intersections. Now, with that being said, it does have an impact because, as I mentioned before, sometimes we get residents or commercial business owners asking for this type of evaluation for their driveways, but we also sometimes get requests for intersections. So in this case, we actually did receive a request to evaluate both Campbell and Scott and Campbell Bohannon. But then because of the fact that we had this new daylighting policy, we just went ahead and installed 20 feet of red curb to increase the site visibility, which I believe the speaker had mentioned. I assume she mentioned those two in addition to some of the red curb that we refreshed as part of the overall cleaning up effort. But yes, so that definitely is something that we are keeping an eye out on. And as I mentioned before, if the future requests coming in are more intersection related rather than driveway related, that daylighting policy will be the first one to go to. Yeah, which would save us some time because then we don't have to come back to the commission for a decision, which we used to have to. Yeah.
Commissioner Allman.
So two questions. One, as a local road, as I understand it, pedestrians and bikes are a weighted mode priority. Any considerations we should think of for this area in terms of pedestrians and bikes? And the second question is, as a lot of these come up, enforcement always rears its head. And so what's the thoughts about enforcement?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Oman, for those questions. So I would say in this case, the ped and bike, while they do have specific impacts, they are essentially benefiting, I would guess, from this request as well. Not both. Scott, Campbell, and Bohannon, they don't have any bike lanes. So as a rider, you essentially share the road with drivers. So in this case, the outcome of this tonight's item, if positive, would also benefit those bikers as well, because then essentially they will be seen sooner by those folks that are trying to exit the driveway. Pedestrians in this case is probably not getting, it's kind of not really part of the picture in this case, because generally, as I mentioned before, as you're pulling up, you typically will look left and right for pedestrians first because of the presence of a sidewalk, and then you proceed looking for vehicles and bikers. So not necessarily the pedestrians, but I think the bikers were definitely getting the same benefit with a positive or with the approval tonight. In terms of enforcement, yes, that is certainly something that we are constantly communicating with our PD colleagues for, and I think the speaker also mentioned, herself plus other business owners have been contacting our PD for any red curb violations, et cetera, et cetera. So it's certainly, they are also a bit of a resource constraint as well, but they do a pretty good job of responding to calls when they could.
I'm going to, I have a comment on enforcement, but I'm going to save it to the feedback. Does anyone have any other clarifying questions before we move to public comment? Yes, I'm so sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, just a really quick question. For the appeals process, our residents and businesses you mentioned have the ability to appeal. Would any of the unhoused population in RVs have the opportunity to contribute feedback to this process?
Certainly.
As part of the appeals?
Yeah, I think if they want to be the appellant, they certainly have the right to. It doesn't have to be just resident of Menlo Park, because business owners, landowners, they can also appeal as well. It's not strictly just for Menlo Park residents that rent or buy. Yeah.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Comos's comment, her question. I'm assuming that all the right, processes have been followed that I know that the staff is very meticulous about in terms of, sawhorses or whatever, just to, advertising to the public on the street that this is under consideration. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Those, so we send out postcards as well as posters with, the item tonight's meeting, the appeal information, all on a kind of a large poster that we put up on A-frames which we then put next to the spots that we are potentially removing. Because we do recognize that sometimes the parking space is not really being used by the nearby residents or business owner, but maybe by someone that works there, that doesn't live, so therefore they don't have the benefit of getting that postcard, even though they are using that space. So we have been using we have the practice of putting our A-frames out there for those folks as well.
Right. Thank you. Do any commissioners have any more clarifying questions for Kevin before we move on to public comment? No, if not, then Matthew, can you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I see 2 raised hands virtually. The first raised hand is Randy Avalos.
Good evening, Commissioners. Randy Avalos, District 5. So this whole thing is it's clearly targeted against unhoused RV dwellers. It's quite distasteful, like it's a guise of safety, and it falls in directions, but it is definitely targeted. Why here, not elsewhere? The presentation was talking about impact or feedback from residents and businesses, and just left out these RV dwellers, these unhoused. And it took the commission to bring that up. Have they been notified? And they've only been passively notified. This is it's going to impact people's lives. A few people, not a lot, but it's going to directly impact their lives when they don't have a lot. It'll increase property value and make the street look nicer. But it's really about removing those RVs. So the whole thing's pretty distasteful. I kind of feel shame on us as a city. So I hope you keep that in mind and think of those people and actually actively outreach to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. The next speaker is Eileen.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Kevin Chen, for an excellent presentation. And as a business owner on Campbell Avenue, we 100% support this initiative. I have video camera footage of people coming out of the driveway, nearly getting T-boned because of the obstructed views that are happening at our location between Campbell and Scott Avenue. I'm 100% in favor and would like to support any way we can to make sure that pedestrians, bicyclists are not being injured and hurt. The driveway alone between these streets don't even allow for 2 full-size vehicles to pass through. There's times where kids have almost been T-boned because of these obstructed views. I understand there's a bigger need that needs to be addressed with the RVs. We want to support that in any way we can, but this is a safety issue, and we 100% agree and approve of this initiative to add additional red curbing and like to push for additional signage as well, as it is causing a huge disruptiveness to the business owners and the pedestrians located around this area. So thank you again for a wonderful presentation, and we really hope that you guys push this for approval because it is a danger to our business owners located here. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Seeing no more virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Commissioners, this is the time in the meeting where we provide feedback to staff on the presentation that Kevin made. Does anyone have any feedback?
Maybe just building on the question from the public commenter, like, do we have a sense of whether RVs will be displaced? Like, is the rest of the street fully parked up in such a way that if we remove 3 spots, there would be 3 people who are just unable to find a spot for their RV? Or will they simply be moved down the block a couple of spots, just increasing the safety without, removing their ability to find a place to sleep at night? Do we know what the impact will be?
Yeah, I understood the question. I would say to answer that, a simple answer is yes. There's capacity on Campbell, Scott, and Bohannon where those those folks that park there will be able to kind of move down further. Now, they will have to move down further, but there are capacity on the street to handle these red curbs.
And isn't all parking in Menlo Park illegal overnight unless you have a special permit? So
Only
are they allowed-
residential districts.
Only resident, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Specific residential districts. So in this
Okay.
case, we're looking at a commercial area.
Gotcha.
So,
Mhm.
okay,
Good questions.
thank you.
Does anyone else have any other feedback for Kevin or questions? I have one, but I'm waiting to see if others. No, oh, good. Yes, given the public comment, I wanted to give staff a chance to clarify regarding outreach to get public comment on this item. And I believe what you said was obviously postcards were sent out. Obviously, those would go to, commercial addresses or whatever in the area. But I also think, if I'm correct, you said that there were displays on the sidewalk, in situ that said that there's with posters that said this meeting was taking place and that people could provide feedback.
right, yeah. So folks that park adjacent to those spots today, they should see those posters on an A-frame, and the paper is typically 24 inches by 36 inches. So pretty
Yeah.
pretty big, can't miss. We're also going to leave them out there for the next 15 days as well.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So for their right to appeal, they'll be.
Yep. So those
understood. Okay.
posters will be out there. Whatever tonight's outcome is, they will stay out there for 15 more days until the appeal period is over.
Okay. Thank you. Also, I know that Commissioner Altman brought up the issue of enforcement, and it does come up quite a bit in this commission when we talk about red curbs and what do you do when people park at the red curbs anyway. I know the police are making their best effort. I'm just curious, when sometimes people discuss the idea of additional signage, in this case, is it signage that just simply says no parking? What is the request? I mean, in terms of the purpose of this action tonight and within the realm of the jurisdiction of the commission, this is about the removal of parking spaces so there isn't an obstructive line of sight. When we do that and we paint a curb red, do we typically put up a sign?
So if we go ahead and do red curbs, we would not need to put up a sign anymore.
Okay.
It's usually one or the other.
I see.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
And to the question, I believe, in terms of other type of signages out there, I think the one that was mentioned by one of our speakers was the no parking for vehicles over 6 feet.
yeah.
Generally, our city practice is, unless there's a really compelling and safety
Right.
related reason, we do not
Right.
put up those signs.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
my
the general
recollection, right? My recollection, we have only done it like once in my tenure with the city, and that was because there were tall vehicles parking up to a T intersection where it's not really creating any side visibility issues, but it is blocking the stop sign. So we then put up a no parking over 6 feet to make sure that there's no tall vehicles blocking the stop sign.
Okay.
That's the only one time that we've used that sign for. That I remember.
I see.
Chair Cole, may I?
Yes, excuse me, Commissioner Bailey.
Kevin, two questions that are occurring to me. The public commenter who made the point that these are passive.
Sorry, Commissioner, is your mic on? I just want to make sure.
Am I?
There you go.
Now
There
I
you go.
am. The public commenter who made the comment that this is passive advertising versus for those who are renters or homeowners would have those messages delivered directly to their mailboxes. Would it be an option to have some of these postcards maybe put under window shields or somehow like given to these folks who are currently residents? But my second part of my question is, if someone did choose to appeal this process, what you presented to us tonight really feels very cut and dry, like with the graphs and the math and the angles. What would be the grounds for appeals if someone did choose to go that route?
Yes, and relatively speaking, it is fairly cut and dry. It's the data, the statistics are there, the sort of the support that we use, industry standards, so to speak. Really, the only ground that we have seen in past appeals would be whether or not the tolerance from those drivers really warrant the reduction of those parking spaces relative to the demand out there. So I think with the example that I gave a little bit earlier about the appeal from Robo, the justification from those residents was Robo, relatively small street, cars are driving at about 25, maybe even lower sometimes, if cars are parked fully on both sides, which they do. So the demand there is really high because of a lot of apartment complexes there as well. So the argument for that particular case was, with park cars on both sides, cars are driving relatively slow. The residents there felt like they are more willing to take on that tolerance level, so to speak, and that was the basis for the appeal. Yeah, but yeah, ultimately is relatively cut and dry.
I just, as far as, thank you, Commissioner Bailey. As I've listened to the discussion and the presentation, just the perspective of someone having been on the commission for 3.5 years, we've looked at a lot of parking space requests, and they very often occur in this way where it's an exit that the line of sight is compromised in some way. And for the safety of the people exiting, we, with some consideration and really looking at all the facts, sometimes I recommend to remove parking spaces. So in looking at the presentation and all the data that was presented, it seems to me that this is a similar case where the views are obstructed and there's a safety issue regarding people exiting those driveways. So I'm inclined to propose a motion to approve the recommendations that Kevin presented in his staff presentation.
I second the motion.
Great, thank you. So I do have a motion and a second on the table. Before I moved on though, because we are treating this as 3 independent projects, technically speaking, we do need 3 motions. However, if collectively the commission here is going to vote yes on all 3 items, then we can just do it all at once instead of try to do it 3 times. So maybe just kind of looking around the dais here, anyone that might not vote all yeses, then maybe we need to kind of separate the motion, but I'm not seeing any.
I can clarify by changing my motion to making a motion to agree with your recommendations with regard to the installing no parking zones at 120, 140, and 160 Scott Drive.
I appreciate that, yes. And if the seconder
I
is
second
willing.
the motion for
Okay.
all 3 of the properties.
Great, thank you. So in that case, we do have a motion on the table, motion and a second on the table for 120, 140, and 160 Scott Drive. Commissioners, I would like to vote yes. If you can please raise your hand and hold it up. And I'm seeing all 5 hands raised. Thank you very much.
All right, we will move on to agenda item E3, which is to recommend to the City Council to approve our Complete Streets Commission 2024 to 2025 work plan. Yay. We did work on this plan at the last meeting, June 12th, and Kevin has been kind enough to mock up our changes and would like to present those now. Thank you, Kevin, for presenting on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up effectively attachment B. So this is, so the red lines are essentially topics, wording, things that we have talked about from the previous meeting, reflective accordingly. So here is the draft. I think you guys can see it pretty well, hopefully. Yeah, perfect, great, thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. So yeah, if there's any additional feedback that the commission would like to provide, I'm more than happy to take them right now. More than happy to make them changes live on the spot, so that way we can be all comfortable with the verbiage that will ultimately be approved by the commission here tonight. So with that, I will pass it back to the chair.
I think that was the Commissioner Bailey recommendation.
Yeah.
Now acting on. So let me just make sure, excuse me, one second. All right. Any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment on the changes that you're seeing in this redlined doc? Okay. Matthew, can you call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press star 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I ask the commissioners if they have any feedback on these changes. I wanted to, if it's all right, to clarify one thing, which was a change that I made when I was talking with Kevin, or I introduced, that was not made during our last meeting, which was that I thought about what Commissioner Altman had said about the transportation master plan not being included in that first introductory paragraph, although it was, as the other things listed, sort of a citywide, a priority of the city council, and it was sort of left out up there. So I recommended that we just make mention of it up there to be consistent with the fact that it, like Vision Zero and Climate Action Plan, are citywide priorities in relation to safe streets. So that is something that I added. The other thing you may notice is that down in 5 here, we made the change that I believe Commissioner Sebrian had suggested around having the first part of this support the implementation of safe routes strategies, not refer specifically to safe routes to school, but safe routes strategies. So what we did is in the first bullet here, where we then do say that safe routes to school task force is underneath the overall strategies, we pulled down that language, participate in safe routes to school task force, and advocate for community engagement program continuity design implementation. And we pulled that down because it was really qualifying safe routes to school rather than overall strategies. It was qualifying what our focus is with regard to safe routes to school. Hope that's clear. Just want to clarify, does anyone have any comments or feedback? Okay, unsurprising, I have one more piece of feedback, which is that on the call with Kevin that I had a few weeks ago, and Elizabeth, Vice Chair King was on the call as well, I did suggest that we reorder items 1 through 5 to express their priority. And I suggest that we reorder it in the following way. So if this is not on this document, if people can now visualize this, leaving 1 as 1. So advise the city council on the TMP is still number 1. I was suggesting that we move 3, advise and provide input to the city council and citywide transportation policies, which includes Vision Zero, et cetera. I thought we should move that to the second one in terms of priority. Number of reasons there, but partly that the citywide bike rack inventory was a request from city council, very recent request. And so obviously that's going to be a priority for us. So that's number 2. And then for 3, I had the safe routes strategy. For 4, I had providing input on development projects. And for 5, I had supporting the council's initiatives on downtown. So it went TMP, ongoing project implementation, advising on citywide transportation policies, supporting implementation of safe route strategies, providing input on major development, and supporting the council's ongoing initiatives to downtown. Does that make sense, the reordering to folks? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. All right, well, if we don't have any other comments from the commissioners, then I suggest we maybe call for a motion to approve these work plan goals. I'm sorry, did I take public comment? No, I skipped. I apologize.
I thought we
Can I
did, but
ask for
maybe
public
not.
comments?
You know
I'm
what,
sorry.
I think, yeah, we might have to, I think Matthew is saying yes, that we took public comments.
We
So,
did. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Good, I did do it. All right.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, so if there's no further feedback or clarifying questions from the commission, I think we can call for a motion to approve this as our work plan. This will go to City Council for our 2024 to 2025 work plan. Anyone want a motion?
Second.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second.
Great, so we do have a motion by the chair and a second by Commissioner Ruskoff. Commissioners that would like to vote yes to approving the work plan or recommending the approval of the work plan to the City Council, if you can please raise your hands. I'm seeing all hands raised. Great, thank you very much.
All right. Well, this is going to be a fun part. Agenda item E4. This is about evaluating our commission subcommittees to support the City Council and the commission priorities. And again, I want to emphasize also, we're looking at the commission subcommittees to be structured and organized in a way that supports this work plan. So the order of discussion is intentional in that we've just looked at the work plan, talked through the big priorities for the year, and now we're organizing subcommittees around those priorities. So Kevin, would you please introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So as the chair had mentioned, generally speaking, we like our subcommittees to target items that we have identified in the work plan. So just so that there's a connection between the two. For various reasons, one, obviously, we want to, generally speaking, there's at least one or two commissioners that are interested in the topic, willing to spend your own extra time on it before it comes back to the commission for a, evaluation and ultimately whatever the outcome is going to the City Council. So what's in front of you here is a list of our existing subcommittees along with the members that are currently assigned to those subcommittees. So you can see we have the Transportation Corridor Subcommittee, which was sort of the result of the TMP. Generally, the main purpose of that particular subcommittee at the time of its formation was to develop citywide east-west, north-south corridors for the purpose of identifying projects in the TMP as we continue to fulfill the projects on a yearly basis. And as I have mentioned in the past, that was before we had the Vision Zero plan, which now we have a Vision Zero plan also which in of itself contains a series of maps that are pretty well qualified to essentially be the base for this subcommittee. And we generally have high collision corridor maps. We also have collision information for the citywide. So there are definitely maps out there now that could be used for the purpose of prioritizing projects just by those maps themselves. The second one is the Safe Route to School Program Evaluation Subcommittee. This was actually a sort of a little bit of a twist to what was previously the Safe Route to School Program Subcommittee. The reason why we added evaluation was the 2023-2024 work plan actually had a specific task to evaluate the program, which subsequently the commission have done so already. So certainly welcome the idea of either keeping it as is, because as you all know, our Safe Route to School program is an ever evolving program on a yearly basis. So certainly keeping the word evaluation in there, I certainly don't see any, it's certainly still on par with sort of what that subcommittee was intended to be. The Neighborhood Traffic Management Program Subcommittee, that was before, so for some folks here, I don't think any of the commissioners actually been through the process. So
No.
yeah, just for the benefit of the commission here, it's the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program is the existing policy that we follow whenever a resident comes to the city and asks for traffic calming measures either on their street or in their neighborhood. It is a program that was developed, I think, back in 2004, if I remember correctly. The idea behind that was we really wanted to engage the community whenever it comes to traffic calming measures. And as you all know, traffic calming measures generally consist of speed humps, perhaps some chicanes. It generally involves either parking, some sort of parking removal, or discomfort to drivers, because that's the entire point of a traffic calming program. So because for that reason, the program was designed to be fairly extensive in terms of public outreach. Multiple surveys, multiple signatures gathering, all to be done by the person that made the request. So essentially becoming the champion for that effort. Over time, there have been conversation about the program being too onerous in terms of the amount of time necessary for what effectively most view as a safety concern, right? So generally those requests come in because folks felt cars are driving faster than they should be. Now, whether or not, what percentage out of that total volume, that's to be collected and talked about. But generally speaking, those requests typically come in because folks felt like cars are driving too fast on their street or in their neighborhood. So because for that reason, there has been a collective effort by the city council, by former commissioners, Complete Streets commissioners as well, to really look at the program and see how we can make it better, make it a little bit less onerous, but still satisfy the original idea of making sure that we get as much feedback from the community as possible. With our Vision Zero, essentially that program now is rolled into what we call the Slow Streets program. Now, the program itself is still on hold because due to COVID, because again, it's a fairly labor-intensive program. During COVID time, when we had a budget deficit, this was one of the programs that got put on hold, and it still continue to be on hold at this moment in time. However, what we are, at least what staff is anticipating, is as we kind of continue to roll out Vision Zero, moving on to the next step of implementation, we do anticipate to bring that program back to the commission at some point in the near future with ideas and proposals on how we can refine that. All that to say, that's what the original idea behind this subcommittee is about. I would say generally my recommendation, if there's a desire to keep this subcommittee, that we perhaps change the name to Slow Street Program Subcommittee, just to match the current naming convention of that program. Or if there's a desire to just disband that program now, wait until staff bring that back to the commission. Because again, even though it is the near future, we're not sure exactly when that near future would be. So we can disband that subcommittee and then reform it once we have a better idea of what it's all about. Because again, whenever we think of a subcommittee, we're generally looking at one or two commissioners that want to devote more time to it, right? As I mentioned before, we're going to come to this commission with a proposal anyways. So if there's no desire to spend extra time on it, then there's really no need for that subcommittee. The last one is the Middle Avenue Complete Streets Subcommittee. So as we all know, this is comprised of our chair and vice chair. And I believe last year, this subcommittee has conducted their own evaluation and observation of the corridor and provided those feedback back to staff, which then got rolled into what ultimately became the final recommendation of Middle Avenue, which was the removal of parking on both sides in favor of buffer bike lanes. And as I mentioned, or as is shown in the what is now approved, so I'm going to go ahead and accept all the changes. Work plan, we still have a couple elements that we still will continue to move forward for this upcoming year. The two pilots, Nealon Park frontage parking, and also Blake Street temporary closure. So there's certainly a, from staff's consideration, there's certainly, if the desire from the chair and the co-chair is they want to continue to be involved in that process, then we should certainly keep that subcommittee on there. So all that to say, those are the 4 subcommittees that we have currently. And if there's any desire to add additional subcommittees as a result of this work plan, staff is more than happy to kind of answer some of any questions that you might have about subcommittees, or happy to pass the baton back to the chair for any discussions.
Yes, or dissolve. Add
Or
or
dissolve,
dissolve.
yes.
Okay, so are there any clarifying questions based on Kevin's presentation from any of the commissioners before we take public comment? Okay. Matthew, can you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now let's discuss this as a commission to establish our subcommittees for the year. I do have some thoughts. Thank you for projecting that. That was important. So as Kevin said, these were the existing subcommittees. I think that if I could express my personal and professional intent with regard to subcommittees for this commission, it's that I think, well, when Kevin and Lisbeth and I met for the agenda setting meeting to discuss this, we came up with guidance for creating CSC subcommittees. So I'd like to read that because the second one is, I think, important to express. The first one, just to reiterate, the focus and subject matter of the subcommittees should reflect the commission's current priorities and work plan. 2, the work of subcommittees is intended to be timely, relevant, and topic focused. They are not standing committees with the exception of safe routes. So those words we discussed, and then they're important to me, which is that the work of the committees is timely, relevant, and topic focused. The reason I put that down is because when I first joined the commission, it felt like these subcommittees were standing and it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear what was expected of them. And I just want to make sure that as we think about them and recreate them for the year going forward, that we think, okay, I, Chair Cole, want to work on this one because it's a priority, because there's more work to be done outside the group that I can be helpful with, and that the work is known and defined and done. The last thing is there can be no more than 3 commission members on any one subcommittee, which is obvious with the Brown Act. But anyways, the reason I think the timely, relevant, and topic focus is important is, for example, working with Vice Chair King on Middle Avenue was actually very rewarding, I thought, because we knew when obviously the pilot feedback was being taken, and we knew when the council was going to hear the commission, and then the council was going to hear staff's recommendation to make the buffer bike lanes permanent. So we went out on several site visits, and we attended, the public meeting in the park, et cetera, and the Zoom calls. And we really committed and dug into understanding at some depth the local conversation and what was at stake. So in the end, we had very substantive, detailed conversations with Kevin about the different options, and we pushed back on a lot of things, and we felt like we were very committed to a good outcome there for the community. So I can go through, I put together like a short list of what I consider to be topic focused subcommittees based on the work plan. I don't know if that's helpful to people, but it might just be a straw man for this discussion. So if that's okay, I'll proceed. I agree with what Kevin said. The Transportation Corridor Subcommittee should be dissolved. That was because we wanted to start focusing more on the transportation corridors. The Vision Zero plan accomplishes that. And now the staff's work is being informed by the priorities of Vision Zero to really focus on those high crash big corridors around the city, Middlefield, Middle Willow corridors like that, Santa Cruz. And that work is being done across the work of the commission. I don't think that subcommittee is necessary anymore. I'll just quickly tick through these with safe. Well, actually, I'll just move to the third one. I also agree with Kevin that the traffic management program subcommittee, I don't necessarily think needs to be a subcommittee, but let me move on. I'll tell you what I came up with. If anyone has any suggestions or thinks I'm on the wrong track, please let me know, because it's really important that we conclude this meeting with consensus around, well directed subcommittees. Okay, so I think the Middle Avenue one in Complete Streets implementation and follow-up, I think we should stay with that because we're moved into this period now of implementation and follow-up, making sure that we follow up and collect public feedback on the 2 pilots, making sure that we stay with our schedule of implementing, installing the traffic calming measures that the community is eagerly awaiting next summer of 2025. So I would continue that subcommittee. If anyone wanted to join myself and Liz on it, that'd be great. If not, keep moving. I also thought, because I felt that it was a good idea to have a subcommittee focused on sort of the major complete streets, location-focused project of last year, that we should have a Middlefield Road subcommittee, the way we had a Middle Avenue one. Obviously, public input's going to be collected on staff recommendations regarding Middlefield. It includes some tricky issues like the Woodland intersection. The changes proposed, should, I think, be dove into, I guess. There's some issues around circulation. There's some things that people want to pilot. So this is it's sounding to me like Middle Avenue, where there's a lot of issues at stake, and it's obviously a very highly utilized road. And I think it would benefit from some commissioners having a subcommittee around that. So if anyone, that's my suggestion. I guess I can just keep moving on with my other suggestions, but there may be folks on this commission that would want to be on Middlefield. The second one is that the city council, having asked us specifically to conduct the citywide bike rack inventory, and the fact that I think that's an initiative that we can, I think, get a lot of fulfillment out of evaluating the inventory and making concrete recommendations and seeing that turned around into action pretty quickly. I think it's great to have projects like that that really make a difference to people's ability to bike. So I would suggest that being a subcommittee. And, maybe we're all filling in data on a spreadsheet and running around and writing down what the inventory is at different public places, but maybe that people on that subcommittee could even partner with Parks and Rec, or there may be a variety of ways to approach that, but I think that the bike rack inventory assessment citywide could be a subcommittee. And finally, I guess my last recommendation is that we change the, in terms of safe routes there, I think that I really liked what, I think it was actually maybe Commissioner Bailey too, but I really liked that Jackie Seabury in the last meeting encouraged us to think beyond safe routes to school and more safe routes generally. Safe routes to school is a piece of that. But there's also something we discussed at our last meeting, which is the creation of mapping out what that safe, connected citywide network of bike and ped routes really is. And another piece of that is actually the Santa Cruz Avenue, Sand Hill Road safety study, which definitely falls under safe routes and is more than safe routes to school. That I know, I've been involved in, and know that Commissioner Raskoff and also Vice Chair King participated in the site visit on that. Oh, and so did Commissioner Bailey. So it's another potential, either maybe there's a general safe routes subcommittee, and then it breaks out into little smaller subcommittees. But so I had safe routes, and I had underneath that safe routes to school, including goal setting, which I think we all agreed was important, safe connected citywide network, and then Santa Cruz Avenue, Sand Hill Road safety study. At one point, we discussed in our meeting that maybe we should have a Vision Zero subcommittee. That could be a point of discussion here if folks have input. For me, we felt like maybe we should all commit as a commission that, the Vision Zero strategy is the foundation of every conversation we have and all the priorities or the work we take on. So maybe it doesn't need a separate committee. That is where I will end. But so basically my recommendation was Middle Avenue subcommittee, Middlefield Road, bike rack inventory, safe routes. And safe routes could include, I would break it out into school, connected citywide network, and Santa Cruz Avenue safety study. I don't know if anyone disagrees, agrees, what they think about some of those ideas, but I'd welcome feedback.
Thank you, Chair, for that summary. So if I may, I think what would help staff the most in this case. So I think there's a really good summary about subcommittees that potentially could be dissolved. We have the Transportation Corridor Subcommittee and potentially the NTMP Subcommittee with Commissioner Albin and Cibrian. Unfortunately, Commissioner Cibrian is not here, so can't get her feedback on whether or not she would like to continue to be on that subcommittee or if she likes to sunset. But so perhaps maybe we'll get some feedback from Commissioner Altman at this point. Yeah, okay. So I think I'm seeing a favor to dissolve that as well. So through the chair, perhaps we can always kind of wait until next meeting to see if do you feel like we want to get at least Commissioner Cibrian's feedback before we
Of
dissolve
course.
it tonight?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I have one, I think, and generally I'm not seeing any commissioners opposing to dissolving at least Transportation Corridor Subcommittee. So I'll make a note of that. And then kind of the next topic are potential new subcommittees that if there's any commissioners that might be interested in. So just kind of a little bit of a, background. As I mentioned before, subcommittees, generally you are expected to spend a little bit more of your own time. That is either going to the field, taking inventories as if you would with the bicycle inventory, or with the middle field, then sort of at least some of the expectation would be you attend any community meetings, or the subcommittee would kind of spend time similar to what the Middle Avenue Subcommittee did, go out there, look at observations, or maybe even set up a meeting with staff. Staff would be more than happy to set up a meeting with you all to talk about some of the future recommendations that might be coming to the commission. Ultimately, anything that is discussed or observed by the subcommittee, our desire is that it would return to the commission for either a report out, or if there's a stronger need for a vote from the commission, then we would definitely want to do that as well. My kind of memory serves me right, generally speaking, previous subcommittees have mostly been reporting out with the exception of maybe the Middle Avenue. The previous version of the Middle Avenue Subcommittee, there were previous commissioners that came up, but that was kind of doing the planning phase before the project actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the inception of the project itself, there was a Middle Avenue Subcommittee that came up with some design recommendations that ultimately came to the commission as a presentation and got the approval of the entire commission to bring that plan to the city council. So that was, at least my memory serves me right, that was the only time where a subcommittee actually came to the commission with something that is require a vote from the entire commission. Otherwise, they're generally just report outs. So
that's actually a good thing to note in that I could see, for example, the bike rack inventory or the Safe Connected City Network group coming up with an approval, a vote on approval.
Definitely the bike rack one, because ultimately that item, assuming there is a desire for a subcommittee, then because there will be recommendations associated with that item as well. So I can certainly see a vote being required from the commission here. So with that being said, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5, depending on how we want to separate out the safe route to school and the other workshop recreation specifically. So perhaps if it's okay with the commission, if you would indulge me, I'm going to go ahead and just maybe list them out one by one. And then if there's any commissioners that would like to be part of a subcommittee, if it's a subcommittee of one, then it doesn't really need to be a subcommittee. But if it's more than one, then perhaps we want to form a subcommittee. So the first one, let's go down the list, first one would be Middlefield. So again, this is an item that we do anticipate to get started relatively soon. Our desire, at least with a subcommittee, if there is a desire to have one, would be to attend any future public meetings. We do anticipate to have at least one community meeting that is outside of the commission or city council. Again, as staff develop our recommendation for the corridor, more than happy to sit down with that subcommittee to share our recommendations with them as well. So that would be kind of that additional layer of communication that is not necessarily afforded to all the commissioners. So those are probably, at least just speaking off the top of my head, probably some additional responsibilities that the commission, that subcommittee would have. So with that in mind, any subcommittee or any commissioners that would like to be interested in that particular item, if you want to go ahead and maybe just raise your hand, and then that way I can see if there's any desire to form a subcommittee.
You interested in that one?
No? Okay. And again, just because there is no subcommittee, those items will still come to the commission. So please do not feel like that it will somehow skip the commission in this case. Okay. So the next one is the bike rack. So as the chair mentioned, this was something that the city council directed back to the Complete Streets Commission. At least from a database standpoint, and I still need to confirm this, but my understanding is that we do have some inventory of how many bike racks we have out there. Not sure how accurate they are, but we have some. We're also in the process of confirming how many bike racks we have in the courtyard that can go out and be installed. So those are data that we are in the process of procuring. If there is going to be a subcommittee, be more than happy to share those information with the subcommittee as well. So then the expectation would likely be, one, confirming that the existing inventory is indeed correct. And then two would be walking the sites and coming up with recommendations on where future bike racks could be. And then once that's done, what I would at least envision would be an offline conversation between staff and the subcommittee, just to kind of evaluate those recommendations, look at the feasibility of those locations, and then coming back to the commission as a whole for a final approval.
I just want to pipe in and say that I think this is, when it comes to sort of the public policy making process, I actually think work like this is really important, because if you want to make a case to the city council to fund more bike racks, you want to see more bike racks, I think, sorry, there's a bug flying around. It's really critical to produce the data and to show the gaps to get the funding. Anyway. So I'll speak for Kevin for a moment. Do we have anyone who's interested in bike rack inventory and being on that subcommittee and helping with that inventory assessment? Yes, thank you. Commissioner.
I also am.
Excellent.
Okay, so I believe that's.
Yeah, I'm happy to help
so
out.
2 commissioners, okay. So I'll make a note of that. So we can have one motion at the end to cover all the actions. Great, thank you. Before jumping to safe route, I guess I'll maybe skip and then go to Vision Zero. So I would, at least at this moment in time, my recommendation for Vision Zero, or at least my vision for the Vision Zero would be kind of, there's a connection between Vision Zero and also Slow Street program as well. So as I mentioned before, we have this Vision Zero plan. Staff is working in the background to come up with a implementation plan. And what that is looking at the Vision Zero's recommendation and coming up with actual locations that we're recommending for evaluation and implementation for the next 3, 4, 5 years or so. So the end product of that is going to be categories. So we have Slow Street program, we have signal locations where we can do some quick builds for, logo intersections where we can do quick builds for as well. So those are the categories. Each category would have a list of maybe 3 to 5 locations for the next 3 to 4 years or so. So that, I think that's kind of, I'm very much simplifying the process, but that's kind of the end product that most likely will come to the commission for a evaluation and approval as well. So again, not necessarily need to have a subcommittee, but if there is a desire for a subcommittee, the most likely outcome would be, once staff have that draft recommendation, to share that with that subcommittee to get their initial feedback before we come to the Complete Streets Commission in this case. So does that make sense? Hopefully, I
If
know
if I'm understanding, Kevin, you're thinking we should be consider and have a Vision Zero subcommittee?
if there's a desire
Yeah.
for a Vision Zero subcommittee, then that's the role that I envision would probably
Yeah.
be most
I
productive
think
for that
that's fair enough.
subcommittee.
It was a very close call. We talked about it at the meeting, and I do think that we just want to really make sure we're vigilant and keep talking about what the data found, what it means for prioritization, what it means for systemic solutions. And so yes, I think that it's also really helpful because for people on that subcommittee to have really expertise in the plan, and so our conversations on the commission can be informed with, the citing the data or citing the findings like on a regular basis. So, all right, I agree with that. We can add that.
Yeah.
Back. And also, I did remember, Kevin, that when we talked about the Santa Cruz Sand Hill Road Safety Study, that it's we pretty much have done the work. So we don't really have to have a subcommittee on it necessarily. I remember we said that it would be something that we would be waiting for the report out on. So we can take that off.
Yeah,
as a
that's correct.
subcommittee.
Yeah, because the end product of that is basically going to be a draft report that we do intend to share with the commission and the public as a whole
Yes.
as well. So
Yes. Okay.
so with Vision Zero, perhaps
Oh,
just
yes.
kind of an eye towards the dais. Any commissioners felt like they would want to be involved in that process? So I do see a Commissioner Altman.
Great.
Any other commissioners that may want to be involved in it? No. Okay. Commissioner Ruskoff. So we have two commissioners. Okay.
And we can ask Seabrian and King, of course, which ones they want to.
That's correct. Yeah. I think what we can do is tonight we'll still have an action to dissolve any subcommittees that we talked about, and then we can agendize it again at the next
I see.
meeting for those folks. I know that Commissioner Vice Chair King, my understanding is that she won't be at next meeting as well. So that might be a little bit tricky. Okay, so I have two commissioners here. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, great. So in that case, the last
Two.
one or two that we've mentioned would be the safe route to school and safe routes to other, I guess, for lack of a better word for now.
Or this project around the mapping out the connected network
Right.
and
Yep.
marketing that too.
Yeah, so certainly if that's the, that could be the scope for that subcommittee as well. And again, I think at the end of the day, we as staff, because we have our CIP, 5-year capital improvement program that's already mapped out in addition to Vision Zero, our plan is relatively clear in terms of which locations we're going to move forward to for the next, 2 to 3 years, 4 years or so.
Yeah.
So I think the effort being put in here would not necessarily have an impact in the near term,
Yeah.
but more so in the far term, where
For the connected network.
exactly, where you're looking at the network as a whole and then identifying perhaps projects that will come online 4 years from now, 5 years from now, or if there's a strong desire to, and this is probably a little bit of the overlap with Vision Zero. So I would want to be very clear about the boundary of each subcommittee, because there can be no overlapping of responsibilities amongst the subcommittees. But that would be probably one that at least this moment in time, I envision that subcommittee to be just really looking at the network, identifying those key locations that are not already in that 3 to 4 year list, and therefore it becomes kind of the future list.
This exercise always seemed important to me, partly because I remember a lot of public comment, the budget process last year, where people were saying, I wish we had a sense of what the network of bike and ped is here. And that was sort of came up as a theme. And the other thing I think is in looking at it as a whole, which is hopefully how the user looks at it too. We identify gaps potentially, and that helps prioritize. So this seemed like an important subcommittee to me. We could also, revisit halfway through the year if we think there's too much on the list and say, oh, we've made great progress on one of these or something, and then maybe begin that one at a different moment in time. Does that make sense more to you?
Yeah. As I'm kind of talking out loud,
Mhm,
I'm
yep.
also, almost like talking myself out of a new subcommittee. This sounds more like a Vision Zero.
Okay.
This could be the role of the Vision Zero subcommittee, because when we go to that subcommittee with a list of projects,
Okay.
it almost makes sense for that subcommittee to look at the map and essentially either agree or disagree with our list,
Okay.
right? And
All right.
and essentially kind of using the map as a foundation for that exercise. So
I remember at the last meeting you
yeah.
mentioned that you might be interested in the network, working on the network.
I guess one comment I might have, I don't know how other people see this, but I think it does tie into Vision Zero, but it also might be important to understand the map in relation to the bike rack inventory and bike rack
That's a good
placement.
point.
That is a good point.
That's a good point.
So I think it's related to both of
That's interesting.
those.
I think that's a really good point as well.
I think we need another person on that subcommittee. Athena,
Well,
Meredith,
first of all,
and-
I don't know, is there a desire for, and I'm trying to understand what category that subcommittee would fall under in this case.
Well,
Look-
we could have the bike rack inventory subcommittee get started. And as they're looking at it, seeing if that makes sense to extend the work to that. But if it connects it and if they're learning about that anyway, as they're mapping the inventory out, I suspect they will.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's a really good suggestion. From a timeline standpoint, it certainly also makes sense because the bike rack subcommittee can almost start right away. Versus the Vision Zero subcommittee, there is still that legwork that staff need to do before we can present something to that subcommittee. So I think that's a
Yeah,
good
okay.
recommendation.
I think
yeah.
Commissioner Seabrian, I can see her. I thought she expressed interest in either the inventory or the network at the last meeting. So, and if it sounds like that subcommittee could maybe use another person just for the work. So we'll ask her. Again, that's another thing we can ask her.
Okay.
All right then. Well, in terms of safe routes to school, just to jump to that, I guess the last subcommittee. I think it was Commissioner Raskoff who made that comment last time, that it seems like potentially what that task force could, maybe the nature of the help they need from us or the support is the goal setting piece, which I agree with, because when they did present the program evaluation to us last year, it felt like I think part of our feedback was that the goals could be more defined going into the evaluation process. So I know Meredith Commissioner Bailey currently is the commissioner who's committed to attend the task force meetings. I don't know if maybe Seabrian might want to be on that one as well, or maybe someone else on the Safe Routes to School subcommittee. Is there anyone else who's interested? Are you still committed to that one, Commissioner Bailey? Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else who's interested in that? They want to raise a hand?
I'm on the Safe Routes Task
Oh.
Force, and I feel like evaluating the thing that I'm on might not be quite right.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm
Mm.
very involved at the Oak Knoll School as well,
Yes,
but maybe there's
yes.
value in having some separation between
Well,
those two.
the good news, if I'm understanding this, Kevin, correct me if I'm not, is that the program evaluation, I was mistaken on this, occurred last year. So for example, like this committee can drop the word evaluation, correct?
That's correct. We can certainly
Yes.
drop the word and go back to the original intent of the subcommittee, which is just the Safe Route to School subcommittee.
In that case, I'm happy to be on that.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you. And I know we sort of said that some of the things we help them with is like community engagement, program continuity, design implementation. But honestly, with the two of you on it, we're really open to hearing what, how you think we can support that task force the best way. I want to just pipe up and say I'm happy to be on Middlefield Road since no one raised a hand for that one. You can put me down.
Yeah, but if
Having
the chairs are the only one that's interested, I don't, we can just have offline conversations. It doesn't have to be a
Sure,
subcommittee. Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Or maybe, who knows, maybe King or Sebring.
I'm also,
Right.
Oh.
I'm also like sort of,
She's sort of interested.
I'm interested. Yeah, I think I can be involved in the Middlefield Road as well.
Okay,
Go.
sounds good. So we have at
Thank you,
least
Commissioner
two,
Como.
so,
Okay.
okay.
Well, I think I could summarize the changes we're proposing. It sounds like some are contingent on conversation with Commissioner Sebrian. Would you like me to give it a try?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, this would be a motion,
That's correct.
Yes?
We'll have to have a motion,
like-
yes.
motioning right and left tonight. Okay, so the motion is to dissolve the following existing subcommittees because their work has been absorbed into others, namely 1, Transportation Corridor Subcommittee, and 2, Neighborhood Traffic Management Program Subcommittee. This removing Neighborhood Traffic Management Program Subcommittee is contingent on getting additional feedback from Commissioner Sebrian, who's on that subcommittee. And the other changes to the existing subcommittees are to change the name to Safe Routes to School Program Subcommittee and drop the word evaluation, which was conducted last year. The motion also includes adding subcommittees. 1 currently would be Middlefield Road Complete Streets Project Subcommittee. 1 would be the Bike Rack Inventory Assessment.
Sorry, Chair, if you
Excuse
don't
me?
mind, when you list the new subcommittees,
Say the
do
new
you mind?
members?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. Middlefield Road Complete Streets Project Subcommittee. The members are currently Chair Cole and Commissioner Arakomos. The motion includes the creation of a subcommittee about the citywide bike rack inventory assessment. Currently, the commissioners are Commissioner Bailey and Commissioner Arakomos. And we will ask Commissioner Sebrian if she's interested. I thought she expressed interest in the last meeting. That subcommittee will come back to us. And just as a note outside the motion, will come back to us and indicate whether they want to also work on the Safe Connected Citywide Network of Bike and Ped routes. The Safe Routes to School Program Subcommittee will continue to exist as a standing subcommittee with Commissioners Bailey and Commissioners Braskoff. The last new subcommittee that will be added is Vision Zero Subcommittee, and the 2 commissioners on that one are Commissioner Allman and Commissioner Braskoff. That is the motion.
Great, thank you, Chair, and that's consistent with my notes as well. So do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, so we do have a second by Commissioner Bailey. Okay, great. So commissioners that would like to vote yes to that motion, if you can please raise your hands. I'm seeing all 5 hands raised. Great, thank you very much.
I want to thank everyone who raised a hand to be on a subcommittee. I think the work this year is going to be really interesting and productive, and I just appreciate your service and your time. All right, then, we are now zipping along. Okay, we are now at informational items. Under informational items, the city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The first informational item tonight is for Kevin to give us any updates on major project status. Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lots of activities going in the background. However, not much to update the commission at this point. The one that I do want to just at least update the commission on the Bellhaven Traffic Calming Plan project. I believe at the last meeting, I had mentioned that there was going to be a signal shut off. However, at the very last minute, there was some additional information that surfaced that required coordination with Caltrains. So we had then since hold off on that shut off until we can resolve that issue. We tentatively do not have any date that we are setting out to be, but once we have that, we'll make sure to kind of share that with the commission. And with that, I will conclude my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, will you call for public comment on Kevin's update?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature. Or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The second informational item, of F2 on the agenda, is the tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda. How intriguing. Kevin, please proceed with an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So relatively new item. So I just mentioned that this is basically the list of anticipating projects that will come to the commission, hopefully by the end of this year. The one thing that sort of came about relatively late to my knowledge is that we do anticipate to potentially postpone or push back the comprehensive shuttle study that we had initially intended to come to the commission for the September meeting, but most likely we'll have to push it back to the October meeting. But it still will remain on the anticipated agenda. And then with that, I think that's it for me. Yes.
Okay. Matthew, would you like to call for public comment? Oh, excuse
Yeah.
me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I missed a question from Commissioner Raskoff.
I just wanted to ask about the status of the intersection study with UC Berkeley. We did the walking effort with these. I do feel like that is of great relevance to the community, and the opportunities that were identified were very salient. I mean, the research, the consultant said there are many intersections that needed desperate help urgently, but I know there's questions about funding it, and perhaps some of the discussion could motivate that. So to me, it seems worthwhile for a discussion as soon as the report comes in from the consultant.
Yeah, no, certainly. And we do anticipate to share that report with the commission. If there's a desire to agendize it as an item
Oh,
for
sure.
future, we can certainly have that conversation as well. Yeah, and we can circle back with the consultant to get a tentative timeline on when we anticipate to get that report. So yeah,
Sorry. I
happy
thought it was
to do
on
that.
the agenda.
I had just a follow-up general positive comment on that. I thought the process was great, but I thought the time with the police guys was fantastic. I mean, he talked about the constraints that they have in terms of enforcement. And I'm just wondering if there's something we can do to actualize that, to make it so that maybe we can invite them to come in and just like talk about the constraints and the reality, the real life practice. I thought it was, I thought the overall thing was great. But I thought that interaction was really good. I forget the officer's name.
Yeah, there were
but-
two of
there were
them.
two, but
I know that.
Probably Chris Adair
I think it was
and,
Chris.
and Corporal Greaves, maybe?
Greece, exactly
Yes,
right,
okay.
exactly right.
bald, the
Yep.
bald guy.
Great.
Okay.
But I thought it was really, really helpful to understand a little bit about, you see a kid without a helmet, what practically they can really do and not do. And I thought it might help us with understanding enforcement generally as a kind of an enabler for us as a consideration.
I agree with that. It was very eye-opening. In addition to the debrief session that they did, just walking around and doing these intersections with them was the best education actually I've had between the consultant who's talking about the infrastructure and the police who are talking about enforcement. Clearly, they need to work better in tandem. And, the police were basically saying they see all these problems at the, very personal level because they're coming to crashes constantly. The traffic crash data lags by a year, but they can just look at it and they say, here's the problem, here's it. But they only have 1.5 officers responsible for all traffic enforcement for the entire city, mostly near 101. That's
Correct.
so there's not nearly enough resources. And I feel like that is, it's not directly part of the Complete Streets Commission mandate, but like your point earlier, like if we don't have enforcement, the best infrastructure in the world won't work. So
I think it'd help us to understand, the practicality of it. Just, what his, and just maybe kind of overall liaison, maybe it's a subcommittee or something, some type of liaison active, like once a year, come and brief us or something. But I thought it was great.
I think that's such a great conversation. I so appreciate Commissioner Raskoff and Altman for bringing that up and then discussing it more, because that was definitely one of the best days I've had as a member of the Complete Streets Commission, was hearing their on the ground observations and feedback. In fact, I bumped into them in the parking lot outside Pete's Coffee a couple weeks ago. We had another discussion that was really interesting about another street. So why don't we discuss that in the agenda setting meeting for the August meeting? And we'll figure out how to do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, great, yeah. And I'll definitely share relay the positive feedback to those folks as well. I'm sure they'll appreciate the positive feedback that they're getting. Yeah, and happy to sit down, talk with the chair and vice chair about how we could potentially roll that either into, a combination with a different, future item, or maybe just kind of its own independent item as well. And we do want to be cognizant about their time as well. So we want to make sure that we, come up with something that is going to be fruitful for the commission and the community as well. So, yeah.
I think also, and I'll discuss this with you at that meeting, but to get a sense of the timeline of the Santa Cruz study. I know Matthew might even know, but we'll get that report back on that next time.
Yep,
Okay.
will do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Matthew.
Hello,
Assistant
Matthew.
Engineer. Just to provide an update and jump in there, we actually just received word from the consultant today, and we're expecting the report by the end of the month.
Great. Great. All right. Well, let's see. I guess, Matthew, we would call for public comment on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So on the next item on the agenda is G, which is committee and subcommittees reporting out. And we just formed our new committees, so no one's reporting out. But however, it does raise a question that I thought might be good to get clarification from Kevin for everyone on the commission. So now that in the next meeting, we'll approve the subcommittees. No, we've made the motions, we've approved them. So technically or theoretically, like people on a committee who could even meet, for example, like bike rack inventory, could meet and talk about between now and then, could talk about, oh, how would we approach this and whatever, meet with you, et cetera. So I want to encourage the committees now. That's just one example. For example, Middlefield Road can't meet because we don't know what's happening. But as you can meet between meetings, you can reach out to Kevin and have meetings with him between our meetings. And in the future, hopefully we'll be reporting back on the work we're doing this year. Okay. That's it then. So I'm going to move to adjourn. It is 8:21 p.m. on July 10th. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time.
Okay. Thank you.